Hello, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live's Leaf Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now in Leaf Talk, joining me as usual is, of course, Aaron William Freeland. Hey, Aaron, how you doing, bud?
Doing all right, Frank. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just wondering, I lowered the volume, but I didn't realize that I lowered it that much.
Have I become inaudible or it just really,
No,
really
you're
low?
you're audible now. You were slightly inaudible, but you weren't. Fix my. I had to take some stuff apart. I'm doing something for the Legion, where and it required a meeting, and it required doing this stuff. So there we go. Now I just got to do one more thing. Welcome to the background of. Anyway, let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs best offseason acquisition, cements number one goalie role. I wonder who he's talking about.
Yeah, this really should come as a surprise to no one. When the Leafs signed Stolars this past summer, obviously the intention was to have him come in and be a backup to Wall. The unfortunate thing is because of Wall's history with injuries, it hasn't really been the case. Stolars at this point has played himself into the number one position. Um, with apologies to Chris Tanev and OEL, Stolars has actually been absolutely dynamite. Um, the one thing I truly appreciate about him is the fact that he doesn't panic. You have goalies like Samsonov who are absolutely all over the place, losing their posts, sliding too far, overcompensating to make saves, that sort of thing. Stolars has been absolutely rock solid. He's posted a 2.12 goals against average and a 928 save percentage so far in his 9 appearances, which places him amongst the top 10 goalies in each category amongst all active goalies so far this year. Jonathan Quick is at the top with a 946 save percentage, but he's only played 3 games. Freddie Anderson has a 941. He's only played 4. And Arvid Soderblom with not 933 has also only played 4. But once you get from there, you're looking at Connor Hellebuck, Luke Dostal, Cam Talbot, and Anthony Stollers. Hellebuck's had a 932, Dostal's had a 930, Talbot's had a 929, and Stollers has a 928. This is definitely the pickup of the summer for them. Really glad to see that he's fitting in as well. I remember watching him when he first broke into the AHL. He wasn't nearly as spectacular there as he has been here, but truly grateful that he's rounded into form from when I first saw him play a few years ago.
The key with Stollers is what you said: is compact nature of his mental game, and his simple approach to playing goal. You know, he has the biggest thing that I find for a big man. He moves from post to post really quick, doesn't he?
He really does. And at 6'6", 243, he was picked 45th overall in the 2012 entry draft. Coincidentally, played for the London Knights, so you can see where we're going with that. But
I-
in his 5 seasons with the
ironic,
Lehigh,
actually. It's ironic, actually,
it really is
because the
because
London Knights connection went to Pittsburgh.
exactly. But I mean, he was averaging a 905 or a 906 in the AHL in his 5 seasons with Lehigh, and a 921 with the San Diego Gulls in the AHL. So, this performance is to be expected. His overall NHL percentage is a 916. So. Definitely one of the best pickups the Leafs have made in recent memory, and for his cap hit, it's absolutely fantastic.
Um, how many times have I told you goaltenders? I've talked about goaltenders that get paid have difficulty. It becomes an anchor to them, a difficult thing to maintain, and it becomes heavy, it becomes a big weight. The other thing is on the same sort of vein, but I've said many times, being a goaltender and having a successful goaltender is more like catching lightning in a bottle. It's experimental. It's like you take a guy out, you put another guy in, he doesn't work. You put another guy in, and then you go, oh, wait a second, now there's something here. And you can go down two or three goaltenders down the depth chart, right? It's happened in the league many, many times. There are a lot of goaltenders that left the team they're originally with, became very good somewhere else. There were goaltenders, have been goaltenders that other teams have seen on teams and gone, that guy looks like he could be really good. Let's see how little we can get him for. And then they bring him in and he becomes their number one goaltender. My point is very simple. Goaltending is not only a gamble in net for the goaltender, it's a gamble for the GM. There is no guarantee with a goaltender, Aaron. If there's nothing else that we've learned in the National Hockey League, at least because that's the league I follow, I got your AHL idea and OHL also. But in the NHL, it really is lightning in a bottle. You find a situation, a goaltender enters at a certain time, is put behind a certain team at a certain time, and all of a sudden things start to work out because I think, and I'm dying to hear your opinion. It's that Yogi Berra thing. Ability is 50%, mental's 90%.
It really genuinely is that way. The headspace that goalies play in is so incredibly delicate. I mean, you've seen it happen to guys like Campbell. You've seen it happen to guys like Skinner. Samsonov spent time with the Marlies as part of not necessarily a physical rehab, but a mental rehab.
Yep.
You
Restart.
know, the supports that a lot of these NHL teams these days now have, not to mention the NHLPA's player assistance program, which guys like Robin Leonard have taken advantage of and are currently using. More than anything else is making sure that you get into and stay in the right headspace. So, making sure that you're on even keel at all times is a difficult thing, yes,
Totally.
but a lot of goalies do actually manage to do it with some success.
They do, and that's great. But I got to tell you, um, I guess in a way, Aaron, and I'm sorry, I think maybe people will be going, well, Aaron said it was a great pick for the GM, and Frank's saying, well, it's all luck. So somewhere in there lies the truth, Aaron. You know what
It,
I mean?
it's
Somewhere in
usually a
there lies.
little column A, a little column B, let's be honest.
Absolutely, it's a dash of this, a dash of that, and goaltending is that unpredictable. It really is unpredictable, and you know what makes it the worst is is the fact that the goaltender can be looking good behind a team sometimes, and sometimes that same goaltender playing with the same agility, the same ability, the same angles doesn't look good because of that factor of the guys in front of them. The guys in front of them can make them look bad and they can make them look good. But then he's handed that opportunity. Can he carry through on the make good part? One. And two, when they're playing bad in front of him, he can make them look better. The problem is, how do we really know which way we're going here? This is the genius of a general manager in finding someone like Stolarz, who clearly wasn't in the clearance bin, but I think what he was on the floor, and before they had a chance to package him, in other words, before people realized who he was, I think Trey Living snapped them before anybody else could figure out, hey, wait a second, I see those numbers, that kind of thing. That's the credit I'll give Trey Living. I hope that's enough, but that's the credit I'll give. He hit while the iron was hot, and he looked at somebody and found somebody, because this didn't come out of nowhere. This guy Stolarz had stats to back up him being good, and played for a Stanley Cup team and helped them get to the Stanley Cup. Admittedly, he wasn't really a main cog in the Stanley Cup final or the Stanley Cup run, but he still got him there, and he played for a really good team and helped them to get to first place, which helped them win the cup.
I mean, in the 27 games that he played with the Florida Panthers, he started 24 and won 16 of them. He had a 9.25 with them. Now, the season prior to that in Anaheim in 22-23, he had an 8.99 save percentage, which, is workmanlike, but hardly inspires the confidence that he now enjoys. It's the consistency that he put together with the Florida Panthers and the consistency that he's shown so far with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 9 starts that he's had, that have led him to this position.
Well, you just substantiated and supported what I said before. Some goaltenders have to be lucky about who they're playing behind, and then take advantage of that opportunity and run with it. So we have a guy here that was 899 in Anaheim, and I think we can all figure out that 899 in Anaheim is probably 925 with the Leafs. You know what I'm saying? See, that's the thing about goaltenders, right? They take the blame and the credit. Sometimes they don't deserve. They are a lot like coaches. You know that they're a lot like coaches.
No, they have a lot of stuff thrown their way, and some of it's justified, some of it really isn't. To blame a goalie for not getting stops is one thing. If it's like he can't stop a beach ball, sure, but at the same time, you have to make sure that your defensemen clear the front. You have to make sure that the forwards are doing the job by being up on the points. It's not as easy as it looks.
I think we've drilled down as far as you can drill in this. So the Leafs are very grateful that he's having the kind of season that he's having,
Yeah.
and Leaf fans should be grateful of Trey Living, who literally set the table for this kid's fine play, because that's what he's done. He's helped to bring in a coach that has a little more interest in playing defensively, which, by the way, helps the goaltender. And so, Trey Living and their head coach deserve a lot of credit for the success this goaltender's having. But then again, it's about taking advantage of the opportunity you have. Wall is not taking advantage of it. Can we blame him for being injured? No, blame is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about reality, where you take advantage of an opportunity. Availability is the one ability you need to have as an athlete. If you don't have availability, no matter how much ability you have, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's the crime that unfortunately Wall is committing. It's not all his fault, but it is what it is. Okay, so Matthews, there was a bit. I don't know. Did you hear the thing about Berkey? He was on a podcast. Did you hear what happened?
No, I didn't. What did I miss?
If you're talking about Matthews here, you want to talk about Matthews. So I'll start. I'll prime the pump with this. So
Okay.
Berkey was on a podcast, and you know how we talked about the Leafs being 32 and 19 or something like that.
Yeah.
32, 19 and 3 or something. So he was on the podcast, and they asked him about Matthews and why is it the Leafs play so well without him. First thing out of his mouth was, "Get rid of him."
I, you know,
He was kidding. He was
I,
laughing. The second layer is killing himself laughing, because that's the point, right? Isn't that like the oddity is that, and he came out and he said, what he said was, he said, look, obviously, well, he didn't say this. I'm adding this part. His teammates respect him enough to work hard while he's gone so that he doesn't feel bad about being out of the lineup and not helping to contribute to a win. So they try a little harder. They pull the rope a little harder. Everybody grabs a piece of the rope and pulls it a little harder than they did before. Mind you, it'd be nice if they pulled it as if he wasn't there sometimes.
I can appreciate the extra effort that they're putting in for making up for the fact that their captain isn't there. But at the same time, if they could do the same sort of thing when he is there, that would be even better. Can you imagine how much further ahead we'd be?
No kidding. No
Yeah.
kidding. No, it's true. It's true. You can't. It'd be so easy to say, maybe they don't need Matthews, but there's still that little nagging thing there, and Aaron, in my head, that as much as Berkey was joking, there's a little tiny bit of it that goes in my head, and I goes, it is kind of strange that they play better without him. Why is that? Why do they play better without him?
Yeah.
I like the reasoning that Berkey used eventually, but I also like the humor at first where he said, get rid of him. Because really that tells the whole story, doesn't it? There's two ways to go with this situation. Get rid of him, or accept the fact that maybe his teammates are pulling for him and they're doing it for his sake. You have some more talk about Matthews. What is it?
As a matter of fact, I do. This actually came across the pipe a little while ago. Matthews has actually been put on injured reserve. They are going to be calling up Connor Dewar. He's been placed on injured reserve, retroactive to November 3rd. What this means is because he's been placed on the short term injury reserve, he cannot play for 7 days, which means that he'll be back, or he'll be eligible again, come the 10th, which is Sunday, which is perfect because they have a game coming up on the 12th. But the move, like I said, is retroactive when he suffered an apparent upper body injury in the 2-1 overtime loss to the Minnesota Wild. Matthews with five goals and 6 assists in 13 games is a little off track, but he missed the practice on Thursday completely. Berube said that it's not a wrist injury, so it's something else. We'll have to see what it is.
Why is it thinking a wrist injury? Why am I thinking a wrist? Why is it wrist injuries coming to mind?
Because that's what he was dealing with last year. He was
And
dealing
he
with a
was
wrist.
banged a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
If there's an injury that's bothered him the most, and this is ironic, really, and scary because his wrists, are the most important part of his body when it comes to why he's so successful.
This is very true. It's
So it's concerning. It's concerning. Hopefully he takes care of it, and the Leafs end up back with Matthews, and we'll just see how long this being without him thing works. Berkey will have more fodder for his thinking. A little more. Let's go to our first intermission and use it to talk about the Canadian Football League. The Canadian Football League, Aaron, let's talk about the Red Blacks, and it appears they've made a coaching change.
Yeah, it appears that they have decided to mutually part ways with their defensive coordinator, Baron Mills. In light of the divisional semifinal loss, 58-38, that they suffered at the hands of the Toronto Argonauts, you got to kind of look at that and think there might be some reason behind it. The team finished sixth in yards and points allowed per game, while ranking third against the run and first in yards per carry. They finished with a 9-8-1 record, but that 58-38 loss appears to have been the final nail in the coffin for him.
It's too bad. It's too bad. But it is what it is, and teams are going to make changes. And you know what you might not know is that sometimes some coaches are saying, "Hey, look, I might try another opportunity." You never know. You can't tamper with coaches. There might be some opportunities out there that they want to go for. We'll find out if there's any truth in that. Hey, the Grey Cup has a home. The 113th Grey Cup, 2026 to be specific.
So that's going to be Sunday, November 15th. Book it in your calendar. Start checking out flights. It's going to be at McMahon Stadium. It's good to see. They are continuing ahead with trying to get a new arena built and a new sports complex in that general area. So we'll have to see what's in store. But the Stampeders apparently put in a very competitive bid. Tourism Calgary is thrilled to have partnered with the Stamps to win the Grey Cup. It's going to deliver upwards of $50 million of economic impact for hotels, restaurants, and retailers. And it's also a perfect opportunity for them to showcase Calgary to try to draw it there. For those who remember, Calgary has hosted the Grey Cup before in 75, 93, 2000, 2009, and 2019. It's going to be a week-long fan fest for fans of all ages with a lot of first-class entertainment. So
I was in Calgary in 2019. It's a beautiful town. Really is. It's a beautiful city. I'm trying to remember. Did I enjoy the Chinook? I remember a lot of snow, but I also remember it being warm. So I guess it might be true. I might have experienced the Chinook. Actually, it says Chinook, but what the heck? CPL soccer, and we've got the championship coming up. Apparently, CBC is going to be showing it, airing it, so that's going to be cool.
That is going to be a lot of fun. Cavalry FC is going to be battling Hamilton's Forge FC for the CPL League Championship. It is obviously something that Canadian soccer fans are going to be looking forward to. Now, the Forge have won the Canadian Championship 4 times, beating Cavalry twice. The club also has won the regular season this year, finishing at the top of the table. But at the same time, Tommy Wheeldon says that while Calgary is going into underdogs going into Saturday's championship final at ATCO Field, there's a lot of faith in the team and that they could do it. Um, there's going to be a lot of fanfare surrounding the game. I'm actually looking forward to seeing if I can catch it on CBC after the divisional finals on Saturday between the Argonauts and the Alouettes. So it'll be a fun day of all Canadian content.
Tell me, Aaron, they're the Calgary team. Why do they refer to themselves as cavalry? I guess, is that like Stampede,
Well,
right?
Stampede, their logo is a horse. Cavalry, they ride horses. There's also the Wranglers in the AHL. So
So
that's
instead of the Calgary Cavalry, they're the Cavalry FC. They're trying to maintain that football club thing that a lot of the teams do.
yeah. In the same way that the Hamilton is the Forge FC, Forge Football Club. So
Yeah, but they're not the Hamilton Forge FC. They're just Forge FC.
does yeah, basically they're Forge
You
FC
get
and
that, right? It's
but
like I
yeah,
don't know why they don't want to name the cities. They don't. It's a thing that they do. God bless them. Let's go to the second round, second period, and the Maple Leafs put superstar Matthews on injured reserve. We talked about that. They'll be taking Dewar. NHL rumor roundup: Leafs, Blue Jackets. There's some and the Kraken, some sort of deal going on.
there are rumors currently circulating that there might be a deal there. You know how the Leafs recently made a cost-cutting move by trading Timothy Liljegren and his $3 million salary to the San Jose Sharks for Matt Benning, who they only have to pay 1.25 million and two draft picks. Um, but they're still in need of clearing more cap space for when defenseman Yanni Hakanpää and forward Connor Dewar complete their AHL conditioning stints. Um, obviously, Connor Dewar's is coming up a little bit sooner than Yanni Hakanpää's, which could be why they've already cleared the 1.75 to make a little bit of room for him.
Do
Um,
we think David Kampf is the best candidate for alleviating cap space? He's the guy that has the most. But I I,
well, I
I
mean,
saw World
there
Cup.
are.
I saw him in the World Cup, and his line led the friggin' tournament, and he was an offensive dynamo. What the heck?
Yeah, a part of it I think is utilization in the role. A lot of the time, unfortunately, offense goes to die on David Komp's stick. But with his $2.4 million cap hit through 2025-26, he might be the easiest one to get rid of. The other one is potentially again, and his name seems to come up every single time, Nick Robertson. Um, I know that he had requested a trade before signing a 1 year, $875,000 deal, um, but he might actually have a better chance of sticking around in Colorado, where they're having a lot of injury issues, or potentially the New York Islanders. Um,
San Jose
meanwhile,
also could be a candidate. They're
that,
rebuilt.
that yeah, he could be potentially joining Timothy Liljegren out on the West Coast with the San Jose Sharks. That's another possibility as well.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Whatever happens at the end of the day, what Trail Living hasn't done that Dubas did, he hasn't sent draft picks with the player they're trying to get rid of. He's actually gotten draft picks back.
Hmm.
He's done it, and that's something the Leafs have to do. They can't give away draft picks anymore. They're still, you know, unburdening themselves with the few picks that they have in the next couple of years. So, they've got to stop that trend. It was a bad trend. You can only, like, free agency is bad money because you're always paying for somebody for what they did somewhere else, not what they're going to do with you.
Well,
There aren't many discounts out there.
I mean, coupled with the fact that San Jose could potentially be a partner, Frank Saravalli with the hockey, sorry, Daily Faceoff's Frank Saravalli has also reported that Don Waddell has been calling around to teams saying, "Hey, look, if you've got an undesirable contract, we'll take it on in exchange for assets." He's received offers from some teams with players having 3 to 5 years on their deals, but he would prefer players with a year or two left, so that puts David Kampf and Nick Robertson on his radar. Um, Seattle is another possibility. Um, the Kraken are at this point, I think, carrying too many forwards and can potentially move one once their roster is healthy. Both Yanni Gourde and Brandon Tanev could potentially be trade candidates. They're both slated to become UFAs this summer, so they would be more short-term rentals than anything else. But they are solid checking line forwards. The issue that they have is there's a lack of goal production there. While they are good defensively, on the other side of it, they need a little more punch,
Yeah,
especially the Leafs.
what the Leafs had from their fourth line there for a tiny stretch was when the fourth line was adding with goals, not only defending well, but adding, chipping in with a few goals, which is what you really want from you want from the bottom half of the team. You want them to not make mistakes and be plus. Doesn't matter how much, but be plus. So, because usually they're up against the other team's third and fourth line. But every so often, for the sake of sort of rattling everybody's cage, you'll get a coach that sends the fourth line out there to do some baggage smashing on the first line, that kind of stuff. Tenderizing. Sometimes they're sent out there to do some tenderizing. And the Leafs do have an ability to tenderize a little bit.
Just a smidge. They are overall a tougher team this year, so I'm glad to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah. Well, tougher in the sense that they react to abuse. That's it. That's all I can say is there's two things that toughness needs to do: discourage that kind of behavior, and if it pops up, smolder it. Smother it. That's what they have to do. If you want your great players to be great, it's hard to be Austin Matthews when you've got three arms on your stick.
No, that's definitely true. Actually, I'm really relieved at this point to see that the Leafs have 2 point a game players. There we go. Try saying that 5 times fast. In Mitch Marner and William Nylander. Mitch, because he's got to play like that. Willie has pretty much always been lights out, so that's great to see. With Willie's 10 goals, I do believe he's leading the Leafs at this point.
Yeah.
Matthew Nyes is second with 7. So, you know,
7. Matthew
yeah,
9.
7 goals. Yeah. So
Another contract in the future.
yeah, that and that's what worries me. It's genuinely what worries me, man.
They always say it's a problem every team wants.
Well, with the cap going up as much as it's projected to go up, I think I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm okay with as long as they make the right decisions on behalf of the Leaf fans. I mean, they've made a lot of a lot of opportunity. You know what? I'm not going to rehash that. Let's just say that they have a certain level of talent on the team that, if surrounded properly, could make some noise in the playoffs. If
For
that
sure.
rest of that, and it goes without saying that the core four, the defensemen that are paid a little bit more than everybody else, they need to do their thing. They have to do their thing, and their thing is the only way they're going to win. Only reason I even have hope that they can do that is because a little bit of what we're talking about here is sandpaper. I love sandpaper in the playoffs.
Well, it used to be that the Leafs had players that would fight for them. Now they have guys that are going to, make sure that other players step up their game. For example, when Marner took that cross check in front of the net
You
in,
see
in
that? That was funny.
Austin Matthews Shanghai the guy from behind, that was absolutely beautiful to see.
Yeah. Hope that's not where he got hurt, because that's not what we want him doing. That's why you need other guys that can do that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And we've always seen through history, it started with Gretzky, where he had the enforcer on his wing. Anybody did anything to Gretzky, there was an immediate price to be paid. And that's if you decided to do something. And a lot of players didn't because of the discouragement laid out for them. Well, they were laid out if they didn't. Never mind. Okay, let's talk about the second admission. Let's talk about Canada and their response to Trump deportation plan, a key focus to revive cabinet committee. We'll see how that affects us.
Well, President-elect Donald Trump did promise to launch a mass deportation of up to 15 million people. Now, this, of course, is a concern for the Canadian Border Services Agency. Um, the highlights here are that it's important for border security to be maintained. there was a significant increase in the number of irregular border crossings between 2016 and 2023, which the RCMP have attributed in part to the policies of the first Trump administration. Um, the RCMP said it had been working through multiple scenarios in case there is a change in irregular migration after Trump takes office in January. And any response to a sudden increase in irregular migration will be coordinated with border security and immigration officials. Um, Now, Syed Hussan with the Migrant Rights Network says he doesn't anticipate a massive influx of people coming into Canada, um, chalking the current discussion up to anti-immigrant panic. Um, I'm not saying that there won't be some exceptions to that sort of thing. The people are going to continue to cross, um, but if you look at the people crossing currently into the U.S. from the Mexican side, there are mostly people who are recrossing post deportation. The reason for that is that a lot of people have families and communities and jobs. The other thing to consider here is the economic impact of deciding to deport 15 million people. Um, that's going to leave open a lot of jobs that were being filled
Do
by,
they have that many police to do that? They
well,
have a policeman for every person that they want to remove. There's like 150, 200,000 policemen in all the United States.
I guess if they figure if they put them on buses, then it's a lot easier. You need fewer police officers per person. But
That's if
at the
they're
same
willing
time,
to go. That's if they willingly are leave.
this is true.
I mean, the biggest problem is that I think what affected the election more than anything was the catch and release. A and B was not shutting down the border immediately instead of waiting to do something. Um, Hindsight's a beautiful thing, Aaron. I've talked to you. I've talked to you a lot about young men and that kind of thing. That they're disconnected from the Democratic Party and anybody saying anything. A lot of the stuff. There was an article I sent to you. I don't know if you got it. Anyway, I
I
sent,
did. Yep.
and that guy is in England, first of all, so he's a distant observer, right? So he's not. I think he's English. I'm pretty sure he's English. I think I heard him in an interview because I was keenly aware of what he was saying. And it's a lot of what I believe. I truly believe that we've alienated. Um, there is, for me now. I think it's a convoluted situation where you have the people who are elite, who think they're elite and behave like they're elite, and then there's the real elite, the people with all the money, or most of the money. The irony is, we talk about the elite and people recoil because of the elite. It makes people feel like we don't like these people and they're not doing anything for us because they're the elite. And the elite that we're talking are people with college educations, not necessarily white, by the way.
Hmm.
People who, the woke people, those kinds of people who promote it to no end, and that kind of stuff. And then you've got the elite with all the money, which are the backbone of the Republicans. The irony for me is when someone says, I'm against the elite, I want to ask the question, which elite are you referring to? Because I'd like to know which one you're referring to. And that's the problem I have. Trump has been elected, and what he's doing, this 15 million or whatever it is that he wants to remove your story, it's going to be too expensive to do it. I think what he's doing more than anything, Aaron, is, that statement he made where he said, for one day, if we get real violent with people, everything will calm down. Well, I think he's also, what he really is trying to do, he's trying to scare the bejesus out of a lot of people who are here illegally. Well, in the U.S. illegally, in the hopes that it scares them out of the country, and
Well,
maybe.
here's the thing, though. Uh, back in uh, back in February of this year, there was something called the Langford Bill that was put before
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Congress, which
absolutely.
had $118 billion worth of funding in there for border provisions. That included 650 million for a border wall, 4 billion to hire new asylum officers, and additional funds to provide counsel for unaccompanied children. Um, you know, there was a lot of stuff in there that a lot of the Republicans were asking for. The
Yeah,
Democrats basically went hands off and said, "Here, tell us what you want." we'll give it to you, we'll solve the border. And then it was torpedoed by our current the current U.S. president elect.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely, it was.
the option was there. The solution to the border problem was there. Now it's only going to be made worse by the fact that Project
Understood.
2025 is real.
World the war that is being fought right now, Aaron, is a war between you know, center left and center right at the most. If that's the best way to, it's the nicest way to call it, rather than say it's the far left against the far right. I think the battle is between left of center and right of center. And the problem with the Democrats and people who think the way they do, the problem is, in my mind, this is just an observation, one that I don't know if I can substantiate it, but I'm I've grown to understand that I've learned enough. And that is the simple fact that the left is not willing to do what the right is willing to do to win. You know, if you're willing to lie and cheat and steal and manipulate, if you want it, the problem is, Aaron, the problem is the virtuous left ties one hand behind their back, and that's why they lost the election, because they have to fight. You know, I was thinking about this all night. How can I justify this kind of behavior? Because that's what it's coming down to: is you got to fight fire with fire. I've come to the realization, you know, in World War II, Aaron, when the people that I support, because I'm a Legion vice president, and I support all the work they did. What they did, Aaron, they went there and did things we don't want to ever do. Our soldiers went and killed people, but you know why they killed people? Because it was either kill them or they get killed. And it was an argument of way to do things. Unfortunately, it's the same argument that is being had now. That is up against, you know, democracy against fascism. Countries that want people to maintain their security against countries that want to subvert other people's security. So, Aaron, for this war to be won, it's going to have to be won fighting fire with fire. And until liberals learn that, they're going to keep losing. But because you can't beat someone who's willing to lie, cheat, and steal. You just can't beat them. If you want to be the virtuous one, virtue doesn't win wars. If they did, we wouldn't have had World War II. We wouldn't have had World War One. If talking about stuff is the only thing that works. That's my depressing thought for tonight.
I can certainly appreciate that, and you're definitely not wrong in that respect. You have to be willing to do what your enemy does in order to win.
If
And
what you want is that important.
yeah,
If
you
you
have to fight for it, and you have to sometimes you have to fight dirty.
they're not going to give it to you. And this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see. I mean, I'm not here to you know, ring the bell for doing this kind of stuff. I'm just saying this is an
Yeah.
observation. That's all. Anyway, we got to move on. And so the results expected in BC election recounts confirming NDP keeps majority. So the recounts looking good for them.
It has actually officially been concluded. Confirmation of victory for Premier David Eby's party has now come 3 weeks after the election, when no majority could be claimed. Gary Begg of the NDP has gone into the full hand recount on Thursday with a 27 vote lead. Although BC's chief electoral officer had said on Tuesday there were 28 unreported votes. The recount was overseen by BC Supreme Court Justice Kevin Liu. It has ended with Begg at 8,947 votes, and the BC Conservatives Hanveer Singh Randhawa at 8,925. So it's a 22 vote margin of victory. There was a separate partial recount in Prince George Mackenzie to tally 861 votes from an uncounted ballot box, but that's also complete. That confirmed that BC Conservative Kilgiddon's victory is by more than 6,000 votes. So, the final recount was Kelowna Centre, and it was the last to be reported, confirming BC Conservative Christina Lowen was elected by just 40 votes over the New Democrats. But at the end of the day, they reached 47 seats first.
Talk to me about the BC port lockout in the.
Uh, this
Go ahead.
is something that's been going on for a bit here. Um, A spokesman from the Office of Federal Labor Minister Steve McKinnon confirmed Friday that the minister spoke with leaders at both the BC Maritime Employers Association and the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 514, but they did not invoke any section of the Canadian Labor Code that would force them back to talks. The parties that are currently involved in the BC Ports negotiation are going to be meeting with federal mediators on Saturday, and this is after Minister McKinnon asked them to return to the bargaining table. So it's slow progress.
Let's go back to hockey, and we'll talk about the wraparound. Should NHL teams implement load management?
Those are your two favorite words. Load management. The thing is, with it, when it comes to the NHL season, it's 82 games. That's a lot of games, and if you're going to be playing that many games, sometimes it's not physically possible. Bodies get worn down, joints hurt, that sort of thing. The question is, do you take players out and deprive fans who paid good money to come see the games of seeing their favorite players? Or do you try to preserve your assets, much in the same way of giving a prize thoroughbred maybe a week off from horse racing in order to recover from some potential injuries or nagging injuries that they may have? Personally, I'm of the opinion if a hockey player says they can go, they can go. But if the doctors say they can't, then they shouldn't. If that counts as load management, then I'm part of that team. But I'm wondering what your take is.
Load management. Austin Matthews out of the lineup for a upper body injury, one that no one can say for sure what it is, means that it's not something that happened. There's no cross check into the boards. There's no slash to the wrist. There's no knee to knee. There's no falling backwards onto his head. There's nothing. If somebody could have seen, you and I both know, if any of the sports channels, any of the people that cover the Leafs, if anybody saw anything that could have, created an injury, they'd be putting it in front of us for us to see. So it sounds like a subtle injury that wasn't something, I assume, by its subtlety. It's also not a bad injury, but it's one that they're saying, you know what, we need this guy healthy. You know what? The team plays pretty good without him. Let's get a few more wins and get him out for a while. Best of both worlds, right? Best of Berkey's first statement and best of Berkey's second statement, right? But that's what we have to do. And by definition, I think that's the motivation for load management that you've highlighted very clearly, where it's not necessarily a planned departure from the lineup. It is just a reaction to the physical state of that athlete. They can go on a run, to finish my argument, they can go on a run of 7-8 games and have no impact. But then they'll have that 1 or 2 games where 2 things happen back to back, and all of a sudden a nagging injury becomes worse than a nagging injury. It isn't one that is an injury, but it's one that is a preface to maybe something worse. And in that case, it's basically not, the load management to keep the word. It's the load of injury impact that you want to diminish, that you want to slow down, that you want to take care of, so that the load of physical disadvantage is lowered by having them sit out. If we could still use that load management thing, because that's what you're doing. You're managing the load of the player's ability, his physical ability. And I think load management can also work in mental situations. It happens with goaltenders. We referred to a Leaf goaltender, Campbell, that in a sense, he was treated with load management there because his mental state was a little crushed and he needed to manage his mental state. So the load was a little too strong, so they sent him to the minors. That's my view on something like this.
Excellent.
Jack Hughes has a goal, 2 assists in Devils 5-3 win over the Canadiens.
Yeah, this is their 4th win in 5 games. Jesper Bratt also had 2 goals. The last was an empty netter and an assist. And Andre Palat and defenseman Jonas Siegenthaler also scored. The Habs have now been winless in 5. Jacob Markstrom finally seems to have found a little something something. He finished the game with 21 saves. He hadn't been all that great earlier in the year, but Alex Newhook scored twice for Montreal, and Brendan Gallagher also had a goal. Sam Montembeault had 22 saves on the wrong side of a losing effort. Now, this is a young, exciting team that does create scoring chances, but their defense is weak and has trouble clearing the zones. The Canadians have actually given up 58 goals in 14 games, which is ow. Um, you know,
Caulfield said he's tired of rebuilding.
you know, yeah, but if you could prevent a few goals, maybe play defense. Uh, you
Maybe
know,
the rebuilding they need is to play a little better defensively.
it's what you hope.
Yeah, you know what? The Montreal Canadiens are a perfect example of teams when it comes to managing the organization. It's Rubik's cube to them. They can't do much right. It's a lot like the way as you followed the Ottawa Senators, it doesn't matter what they did. When they look to think, I don't seem to be any further ahead like I look when I look at Rubik's cube. There are some teams. Unfortunately, I've said before, Aaron. I'll continue to say it. When it comes to leadership, almost immediately whether they're going to be good. They're going to be good or not, because they trend very quickly. If a general manager is good, yes, they'll be smart. Some are smart enough to say, you know what, strip it right to the to the 2x4s, and we'll go from there. So that takes a little bit of time, but that also gives you less excuses of saying, well, I didn't have control of who I have on the team. Remember, at some point you're flipping the team, you're turning it into something more that reflects what you want. Now, if you do it to the bone, that means you get to do it right away. If you do it a little bit at a time, maybe people are a little more patient, or the word might be fooled into not being too in a hurry to see it progress. But there's always a trend. There's always a trend with every team, with every organization. We saw it in Florida. They ended up winning the cup after they got a new general manager who changed things around. When you have somebody good. Now, again, does that fit into Trey Living? Does Trey Living fit that kind of, is what the Leafs look like today compared to when he arrived? Are they a better team? Are they a team by better that may not necessarily get as many points in a season, but play better in the playoffs? Because we all know there's truth to that.
Well, there are two
Right?
very different types of hockey that are played every year.
And
So,
so what do you want to do? What are you hanging your idea on? What happened with the Leafs before is they would put together a team that was great in the regular season, and then try at the end of the year with 2 weeks left into as early as 2 weeks before the trade deadline to bring people in that you think will help them do well in the playoffs. I don't think that works. I just don't think that works. I like the way Trey Living's doing it. They're committing to a plan, and the plan is bigger is better in the back end, right? Feistier on the front end is better, and a big ass goaltender. That's something the Leafs didn't do under Dubas.
no, you're definitely right on that. They tended to go with smaller forwards and faster forwards, which again, like you mentioned, seemed better built for the regular season. This, to me, on paper, looks like a more well-balanced team for that sort of thing. There's enough sandpaper on lines 3 and 4 to help them at least win games. And when it comes to the playoffs, you're hoping that the players in the top 6 can eventually change that around a little bit as well and bring a little more bite to their game. Um, you know, they're playing consistent 500-ish hockey. They're currently listed as Bettman 571, which only takes into account wins versus losses, is not that overtime shenanigans, which is definitely one way to judge it. But they are sitting more at a true 500 more than anything else.
I judge
500 isn't going to get you through.
I judge the teams by where they are plus wise in games, points, right?
Now,
It,
right now, the Leafs are +2. They've had 2 more wins than they've had losses.
and,
They're also currently +4 with a goal differential. That is also hyper important.
Right. So they're +2, and you get, I think New Jersey's at +4, but they've only played 11 games. But you
Hmm.
see, that's projecting that they maintain the trend that they're doing, right? But they
Right.
could take those extra 3 games that the Leafs have played and lose them all, you know. But the point being that where they are, it's a snap. In my mind, it's a snapshot, and the snapshot says to me that even if a team has less points, if they're plus more or equal to the team above them, they've got more time to make that up. There's more hope. It's like everything else in the playoffs, right? It gets to the point where, you know, in some sports, it's not about how many games you've won, it's how many games you've lost. Like in baseball, if at the end of the season you're losing too many games and the other team has extra games to play, if you've lost too many already, you can't win those games anymore. So, you know, you have a worse record. That's the way they identify it in baseball. In hockey, for me, it's the plus, and the Leafs are always above Gary Bettman's 500. I'll call it Gary Bettman's 500. As they have to be plus Gary Bettman's 500, because if you notice, every team that's plus is in the playoffs. Everybody who's equal or less is not,
Yep.
because
100%. That's spot on.
that's where the percentage lies. So the Leafs are at least, you know, they're as high as second, but the battle for first in their division this year isn't as intense as it has been in past years. So, you know, it's a little bit of fool's gold. The second they're in this year isn't the same second they were in last year, if you follow what I'm saying.
No,
Or
and Florida's on a 6-game win streak and +7. So
yeah, and that's where that number matters to me.
yeah.
Why don't we talk about the Sens? We talked about them a little bit. Let's talk more. Bo Horvat, the Vancouver Canuck that went to to Long Island, beat the Senators.
Yeah, Anders Lee had a goal and an assist for New York. Bo Horvat had a goal and 2 assists. The Islanders doubled the Senators 4-2 last night. Jensen and Batherson scored for Ottawa in the third. Tim Stützle had 2 assists. But Horvat managed to put it away with an empty netter with 10 seconds to go. So technically speaking, it was more of a 3-2 game. But there you have it. Stützle did actually to have a bit of a boo-boo and had to leave in the first period, but did come back to start the second period.
Beautiful. Let's talk about the Flames. Or no, let's go with Jets first. I like Hellebuck.
All right. Hellebuck stopped 35 shots for his third shutout of the season as the Jets beat the Avalanche 1-0. Gabe Vilardi scored. He was the lone goal. He scored in the first minute and 6 seconds. And you know what? Hellebuck stood on his head all the way through to make it stand up.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there, Aaron. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
Appreciate that, Frank.
All right, for Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Leaf Talk, seen live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Network for Zingo TV and Spanglish.ca and Spanglish World. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.